Hello and welcome. It's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 22nd of January. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. Could Kim Jong-un be heading to Russia? Moscow says the North Korean leader responded positively to an invitation to come for a key anniversary celebration in May. The Yemeni government and Houthi fighters agree to end a violent standoff in the capital, but concerns linger that a coup could be in the works in the impoverished Arab nation. Plus, world leaders and global CEOs kick off the Davos World Economic Forum, stressing the importance of investment and structural reforms to secure future growth. We begin with the clearest signal yet that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is planning on visiting Russia in the spring. Giving his annual news conference on Wednesday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Kim gave a positive response to President Vladimir Putin's invitation. Lavrov added that around 20 heads of state, including Chinese President Xi Jinping, have confirmed their attendance for Russia's World War II Victory Day celebrations. That will happen on May 9th. South Korean President Park Geun-hye has also been invited, but no word yet on whether she plans to travel to Moscow. Now, if Kim Jong-un goes, it would be his first overseas trip since coming to power in 2011. It would also mark the first time a North Korean leader has not chosen China as his first overseas destination. And staying with North Korea, and reports say the regime has a strong desire to hold talks with the United States. Pyongyang said earlier this month that it was keen to talk, but it's thought the North wants something concrete sorted out sooner rather than later, especially as Washington's annual military drills with Seoul are fast approaching. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
North Korea has reiterated its readiness to mend fences with the United States. The Chosun Shinbo, a pro-North Korea newspaper based in Japan, claimed Wednesday that Pyongyang's recent proposal to Washington should not be taken as a mere charm offensive. Earlier this month, Pyongyang proposed to temporarily suspend its nuclear tests if Washington canceled its joint military drills with Seoul. That proposal was flatly rejected by the U.S. The paper said North Korea does not want talks for talk's sake, but to make serious progress in their dialogue. To do that, it said the two sides must come to the negotiating table without any military threats. But on the same day, in a separate paper, North Korea made more threats directed at the U.S. Through the state-run Nodongshinmun newspaper, Pyongyang said it will launch defensive counteractions if Seoul and Washington conduct joint drills in March as planned. The paper urged the U.S. to halt its rehearsal for an invasion, calling it a key precondition to easing inter-Korean tensions. While Pyongyang seems to be testing the waters with Washington, some analysts say a bilateral meeting between the two Koreas could open a path to engagement. But that would have to come after North Korea gave a much-awaited response to South Korea's offer for talks made last month. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
Japan has yet again claimed its territorial claim on Korea's easternmost Dokdo Island. Now, it's a common occurrence, but what's unusual this time is that Tokyo has made the claim for the first time in its Korean language version of its latest defense report. On Wednesday, South Korea's defense ministry summoned an envoy from the Japanese embassy and demanded that it never happen again. But the Korean ministry itself is under fire for its slow response, because, as it turns out, the defense report was delivered to Seoul almost 1 week ago. Japan has claimed Dokdo in its Japanese language defense report since 2005. Back here in Korea, and 6 government ministries are giving their action plans for the year to President Park Geun-hye on this Thursday. They include the Education, Employment, Gender Equality, Welfare and Environment ministries. The Education and Employment ministries have been working together to develop an envisioned competence-based society where creative talents are nurtured and also respected. The government aims to further promote the so-called free semester programs for teenagers, where students are exempt from exams for a semester to give them some time to de-stress and enjoy other pursuits. and also vocational schools for teenagers who have a clear job goal in mind. The Gender Equality Ministry aims to induce more women into the workforce by laying out various supportive measures for them. And the government wants to do more to promote and celebrate Korean culture, outlining its plans for 2015. The Culture Ministry says greater access to arts and cultural activities are key to making the nation an all-round happier place for everyone. Connie Lee reports.
Having a happy life through arts and culture. That's what Korea's Ministry of Culture, Sports and Tourism is promoting in their official plans for the new year. The ministry announced Thursday that one of its major goals is to add more avenues where people can enjoy the arts, especially on the nation's designated Culture Day.
Despite efforts to promote this day in its first run in 2014, we found out that the awareness level of Culture Day only stands at 30%. So this year, we plan to bring arts and culture to the people, especially those outside the city or in rural areas.
Culture Day falls on the last Wednesday of every month, and on this day you can get free admission or discounts to museums and galleries, and even discounts to concerts or theaters. And this year, more venues, at least 1,800 nationwide, will be participating in this monthly campaign. Another goal for Korea is to boost its national image by promoting its arts and culture to the world. According to an annual index of 50 developed countries, Korea ranks 27th in terms of national brand, with people around the world having more positive perceptions of Germany than any other country. One way Korea will try to improve its image is by joining this year's Milano Expo, a 6-month affair in the Italian city where 145 countries will gather to showcase ideas on food, science, and technology. The ministry also plans to spend more on Korea's tourism industry, from $22 billion in 2014 to $24 billion this year. With the new plans now set to go, the government can now only hope that they will contribute to the people's happiness this year. Connie Lee, ARIRANG News, Sejong.
Now, uncertainty still rules the streets of Yemen, but a tentative agreement could be the start of calm, perhaps in the Arab world's poorest nation. To find out more, let's get the latest from Eunice Kim, who's standing by at the news centre. So, Eunice, tell us more about this deal that came about in the late hours of Wednesday.
Well, Mark, it looks like the Houthi rebel group could be getting what they have been campaigning for so long, and that is greater say in how the government is run in Yemen. The Shiite group had taken over much of the capital of Sana'a since September and seized the presidential palace earlier this week in what some government officials had characterized as a coup. Now, those powers are to be outlined in a new constitution to be crafted with President Abd Rabbu Mansur Hadi in exchange for the rebels to pull back from the presidential palace and residence as well as other locations. Now, that is not what we are seeing yet, but outside the presidential residence where President Hadi is believed to have been holed up during this latest spate of violence, Houthi gunmen did continue to stand guard. Yemen's official Saba news agency said President Sadi had agreed to specify Yemen as a federal state. The Arabic country, of course, has been riddled with sectarian and ethnic challenges, enabling groups like Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula to expand their operations. President Hadi took office back in 2012 with support from Saudi Arabia and the U.S.
OK, Eunice, and turning now to the crisis in Ukraine, and fighting there between government forces and pro-Russian separatists persists as Kiev and Moscow have continued to exchange harsh words with one another. But there was a meeting of foreign ministers on Wednesday, which there seems to have been some progress.
Some progress there, Mark, and that progress you speak of was shared by the foreign minister of Germany, who hosted that meeting with his counterparts from Ukraine, Russia, and France in Berlin. Now, they came to an agreement that both sides, Kiev and Moscow would withdraw their heavy weapons. I guess I should say pro-Russian separatists there instead of Moscow. But they would withdraw their heavy weapons 15 kilometers behind the demarcation line as defined in last year's Minsk agreement. He also told reporters that while it was no breakthrough, it was the result of very difficult talks that were, quote, testing the patience of all involved. This as just hours earlier, Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko had told a group at the World Economic Forum in Davos that Russia sent 9,000 troops to occupy roughly 7% of Ukraine's land. Holding up there a piece of bullet-riddled metal, he said, was a piece from a bus that was heavily shelled by Russian artillery last week that killed 13 people. He said for him it was a symbol of the, quote, terrorist attack against his country. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov there said the allegations should be backed up by facts and that he hoped for progress at those peace talks.
Well, I suppose some progress is better than absolutely no progress, isn't it, Eunice? Mm-hmm. So thank you for those stories, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers $15 billion. And now to the latest on the young South Korean man who recently disappeared in Turkey. And authorities are pretty sure the 18-year-old voluntarily crossed the border into Syria. But they say there isn't really enough evidence to say he definitely went to join the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. Gwon-swa has more.
It's been more than 10 days since a young Korean man, known only by his surname Kim, went missing in Turkey. But there's growing speculation that he may somehow be linked to the Islamic State. On Wednesday, the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency announced the results of its preliminary investigation into the disappearance, saying the 18-year-old crossed the border into Syria voluntarily. Police say there is a low chance that he was forced or kidnapped. They have not found any evidence that he is involved in the militant group, only clues of his interest. Investigators restored Kim's computer and found that as of January last year, many of Kim's key search words were related to the Islamic State. He also expressed his interest in IS on social networking services. Local Korean news channel YTN reported that Kim had left a message for his family before embarking on his trip, which says joined IS. Although grammatically incorrect, it suggests he was telling his parents he was going to join the group. The 18-year-old's whereabouts are still unknown following his disappearance on January 10th from the Turkish border city of Kilis. If he is found to have joined the Islamic State, he will be the first known Korean to have done so. Kwon-swa, ARIRANG News.
And as we just saw there, social networking services like Twitter can help terrorist organizations like Islamic State spread their message and connect with the world and disillusioned individuals like that young Korean man who may have joined IS. And that has prompted Korea's censorship body to crack down on terror-related information on SNS, such as Twitter and Facebook. The Korean Communications Standards Commission says it plans to block access on SNS services to information about imitating terrorist acts or joining terrorist groups, extremist groups. The agency will meet on Thursday and is going to thrash out an urgent bill on the matter. Now, some good news for Korean expats, because Korean nationals residing overseas will be able to get their resident registration cards reissued from this Thursday. Up until now, a Korean person's resident registration, or ID number essentially, was cancelled after they obtained permanent resident status in another country. And without this number, it's much more difficult and time-consuming to either make financial transactions or do any kind of administrative work in Korea. Because of this, the government says it's going to issue ID cards to permanent overseas residents if they plan to stay in Korea for more than 30 days. Also from today, those who will obtain overseas residency will be allowed to keep their Korean ID number. The government expects some 110,000 will apply for the renewed registration. The world's most powerful politicians and business leaders are in Switzerland for the 45th edition of the Davos World Economic Forum, where the emphasis is on investment and structural reforms to secure growth. Addressing the forum on Wednesday, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi said it's time to stress the importance of growth rather than austerity measures. He also urged the European Central Bank to find a new investment and growth-oriented direction to revive a stagnant Europe. Axel Weber, the former head of Germany's Bundesbank and current chairman of UBS, said countries needed to take tough decisions on jobs and pensions and that more action was needed to centralize national powers across the Eurozone. President and founder of the annual forum, Klaus Schwab, also said it was important that countries coordinate their policies to stimulate growth. Now, over the past few days, we've been taking a look at Korea's burgeoning startup industry. But today, we're going to turn our focus to Israel, a relatively small country in terms of size and population, but a world leader when it comes to the environment for startups. So, what can Korea learn from Israel? Our Connie Kim takes a look.
Israel has over 60 IT startups listed on the NASDAQ. That's more than the combined total number of startups from Europe, China, Japan, and Korea. And this comes on the back of the country's strong R&D gene. Scientists and technicians per capita in Israel are nearly double those in the U.S., helping Israel's innovative city, Tel Aviv, become the second best startup ecosystem in the world after California's Silicon Valley. Experts say the country's unique chutzpah culture, or pioneer spirit, also plays an important role in creating venture capital buzz. But helping to weave these elements together is the government. Through seed investments, it's been supporting the core technology of startups, hard and costly to build up, but regarded as critical for development.
They are heavily investing in this very, very risky stage where usually commercial organizations are quite averse to investing in this area.
Israel's first venture capital firm was established in the mid-1980s. By 1993, the government collaborated with the private sector to form Yozma, one of the country's largest venture capital funds. Luring in foreign venture capitalists by offering tax incentives and doubling investment through a government matching program, Yozma managed over $220 million in its three funds.
Israel's venture capital funds take bold steps in making risky investments, but that's not the case in Korea, where investors have high expectations on retrieving the money they put in.
Creating a favorable environment for new businesses, Yozma also helped to connect and oversee the acquisition of local startups by global corporations such as Microsoft, Johnson & Johnson, and Cisco. In 2013, the acquisitions and IPOs of Israeli companies far exceeded $6 billion, while startups totaled more than $2 billion in venture funding. With the right conditions to flourish, market watchers say there's a good chance the next Facebook or Google will emerge from Israel. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, taking aim at the low end of the market, Samsung Electronics has launched a new smartphone in Korea that will retail for under $500. The Galaxy A5 is now available for purchase from the nation's three major telecom carriers, SK Telecom, KT and LG U+. You'll be able to pick one up for roughly $450. That's about 40% cheaper than the company's flagship S series. It's a lot cheaper, but the model still boasts a fully metal body and features a 5-megapixel camera along with a 5-inch high-definition display. The Galaxy A7, another model in Samsung's low-end lineup, is scheduled to be launched sometime next week. The Korean firm is hoping these new models will challenge the rise of lower-end Chinese smartphones.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games, as the organizing committee got the good news that the Korean government is willing to fully back the committee. Now, with the organizing committee lacking the proper funding to fully prepare for the 2018 Winter Games, the Korean government has stepped up to help them financially. An unnamed government official stated that the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games will be funded like the 1988 Seoul Summer Games, adding that the organizing committee chief Cho Yang-ho will be given more power to run the committee. Now, good news for the organizing committee with roughly 3 years to go until the 2018 Winter Games in Pyeongchang. 3 goals, 3 wins, and now the Korean national football team is hoping to make it win number 4 during the 2015 Asian Cup, as they're set to face off against Uzbekistan later today during the quarterfinals. Now, with the 69th ranked Korea set to face off against the 71st ranked Uzbekistan, Korea does have a better record at 8 wins, 2 draws, and only 1 loss in the 11 times that they faced each other. But Uzbekistan looks confident going into the quarterfinals despite finishing second in Group B. Now, in a press conference on Wednesday, Korea's Ho Heung-min made it clear once again that they're here to win the title, as manager Uli Stilike is set to start him in this match. Now, the new year is over 3 weeks old, yet there are awards still being given out for the 2014 season, just like the International Shooting Sport Federation's Player of the Year honors, which was given to Korea's Kim Jong-un. Now, the 36-year-old who missed out on another individual gold during the 2014 Asian Games in Incheon still had an incredible 2014 season, including 2 gold medals during the 2014 World Championships. He also broke a 34-year-old world record in the 50-meter event and found himself at the top of the world rankings in both the 50-meter and the 10-meter category. Meanwhile, he's set to prepare for the 2016 Rio Summer Games starting next month at the Jincheon Athletes Village. Now, the KBL has done a lot in trying to improve the league, and starting this year, they added the KBL D-League, or the Developmental League. And with that, the first champion in the D-League was crowned on Wednesday. And no surprise here, the powerhouses when it comes to amateur league, Sangmu, the military team, dominated the Orions in the best-of-3 series 82-57 to claim the first D-League championship. Now, despite the Orions changing up the lineup in Game 2, Sangmu took control early with a barrage of threes and closed it off by out-rebounding them in the second half of the game. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Good morning. Mountainous regions in Gangwon-do and Gyeongsang-do provinces received heavy snowfall, and as we can see, it's still snowing over there. Seokpo, one of the counties in Gyeongsang-do province, saw 15 centimeters of snow, and it's likely to snow till the late at night for the parts in the east, while other parts of the inland regions could see light flurries passing by. In the meantime, rest of the country should continue to enjoy mild winter weather today. Seoul will have early spring-like conditions topping out at 7, and Busan will also have a mild day with high peaking to 9. But the cities like Daegu and Gwangju should have a slightly cooler day today with top temperatures peaking to 7 and 6 respectively. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon will peak at 8 and 6, and Dokdo will rise to 4 this afternoon. Now, temperature readings seem to remain on the warm side till the end of the weekend, making a great conditions to be outdoor. That's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that is all we have for now. Plenty more stories worth checking out online, and we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. Until then, goodbye.